Hello everyone, Fluff here. So today I'm going to be bringing you a video discussing the status effects within the game, what they do, and how we can use them, and how we tend to use them in our runs to gain bigger damage. So to begin with, I'm going to have to explain what each status does, and why they can be used in different ways. So first things first, I'm going to give the additional description of the burn. So burn status deals damage equal to 200% of your breaker's attack power every second for 15 seconds. This is not that great. The problem with this is it's 200% of your breaker's attack power, which means it's not going to be affected by your crit damage, any of your weapon damage, your skill power, or any of the multipliers, which means you're only going to be doing 200% of whatever your current attack power is, which caps out at 1,000. So ideally, it would only ever be doing 2,000 damage a tick. The lesser effect is pretty handy though. The attack power by 2% of enemies being reduced up to 10 stacks. These aren't indicated as a debuff on the boss's debuff bar. You'll only really notice these by the visual effects on the boss. But you don't need to know that they're active, because they'll just be active whenever you proc this status usually. Moving on over to freeze, we have a freeze effect that will last for 5 seconds. Freeze status also reduces the target's movement speed by 2% and can stack up to 10 times, so 20% as a total. Moving on over to petrify, we have another freeze type effect that lasts for 7 seconds, but this time it also increases the armor of enemies by 30% whilst it's active. Also reducing attack speed by 2% for 10 seconds. This is very useful, more than it reads at face value. Reducing an enemy's attack speed, not only does it reduce how often you're taking damage, but it also slows down the animations of their attacks, which if you remember my previous video, or if you haven't seen it, I suggest watching it, as I give a brief description on how we utilize certain frames of bosses to skip phases by catching them as early as possible. Moving on over to shock. Shock is a really powerful status and is very undervalued by many. Reducing a target's defense can both play into Petrify by reducing that armor it's gaining, as well as just giving a way of shredding defense on breakers that don't have way of shredding defense. So this could be like very useful on Liner, who doesn't have shock innately, but you can pick this in the run and suddenly have a way to reduce the defense value of enemies. It also reduces the attack speed by 5% up to 10 times, so this is now 50% attack speed reduction with a also 20% here, so you can actually do a 70% attack speed reduction on the enemy. Moving over to poison. Poison deals damage equal to 0.1% of the target's maximum HP every second for 15 seconds, and it can stack up to 5 times. This is pretty strong. You won't notice the damage too much early into your runs, but as the runs get later on, as the enemies get more total health values, and you get those really tanky bosses like Sand Shark at Planet 30 in your seasonal runs, this will start to truly shine and do millions of DPS just by itself. It also reduces the target's attack power by 2%, another like burn. If you stack these up, they do stack upon each other. Very useful. Moving over to bleed. Bleed does a damage multiplier to the enemy for 10 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. You won't really get the 5th stack of the main multiplier, because as soon as it gets to the 5th stack, it will detonate itself to deal 5% of the enemy's max HP as damage. This is currently bugged or intended. We're not 100% certain. I have messaged the devs. I've also put it in the bugs channel with no clarification coming back to say if it is a bug or intended. But the proc from bleed that does 5% of their max HP also can crit and can be scaled with crit damage, as well as outside multipliers like Bronte's orb debuffs. The reason I say this is a bug, because it's the only status effect in the game affected by your stats and not just its base damage as its calculation. For example, poison's damage is only ever going to be 0.1% stacked up to 5 times. And burn is only ever going to be 200% of your attack power. Neither of these are affected by anything else, it's just bleed that is. You can increase the duration of these effects with stuff like status effect scope, which increases the duration of your status effects by 50%, as well as the status effect duration increasing in your upgrade tree and your seasonal upgrade points. These can be useful for these lower duration effects, which 5 seconds is not much, and this is important to now note because of this line here that is present on every single status in the game. So what this means is, if you're familiar with MMO type games like World of Warcraft or any PvP-esque game where there is some sort of crowd control abilities built into it, there's usually something called diminishing returns. This means the more you use something, the less effective it becomes. So your first application of a status is going to be at 100% of its duration, which is affected by your duration increases. And then for each application afterwards, it will reduce it by 20%. It says 10 to 20, but it is 20% per application afterwards. So that means the first one will be 100%, then 80, 60, 40, 20 immune. This is why you will feel sometimes on bosses that after a few phases, the boss is suddenly immune to your statuses. It's not because it's random or the fact that it's getting enraged, it's because of the fact you've used up your 5 total statuses with that status, or you've mistimed it a little bit and you've applied it right before the boss would transition, and then it's just removed that status, wasting a valuable proc. To really prevent that from happening, all you have to do is be really actively looking at the debuff bar and get in the habit of knowing when a boss is about to transition by how close it is to moving to its next health bar, and trying not to apply a status right before that happens. The way that we gain damage through these status effects, though, are going to be from these various target relics that you can see just above here. These are really powerful, and you want to use these as a main source of multiplier in your runs. So you will pick up your attack power relics, your crit power, your critical chance relics, your critical damage relics and stuff, which are really good for increasing your base damage. But then as you've increased all that base damage, these relics will further multiply all of that base value and will just make your numbers get larger and larger and larger. The reason I haven't highlighted this one yet, and we're now going to talk about it, is because this stat is worded wrong. Now, what this reads is 50% damage increase against enemies under status effect would imply that as long as an enemy is under a status effect, you'll be doing 50% increased damage. That is wrong. What it's actually doing, and it's the same with the secondary effects on these here, is for each active status effect, you will be doing 50% more damage. So if you have a bunch of these, all leveled up, with various reactors in your runs, playing someone like Liner, or just having various sources of these statuses innately via multiple breakers in your party, applying different statuses each, you're going to be getting some serious numbers stacking in terms of multipliers really fast by picking these up in your runs. So the way that we combat this and use this to increase our damage in our runs is we like to run meta lineups quite a lot for Extreme, where we'll be running double jungler Sandman, and in Seasonal we'll be running Sandman Bronte jungler. So in the Extreme runs we will have our Petrify from Sandman, as well as Burn from jungler. Now in Extreme you can't pick up these targets, but you can pick up this. When we find this in the run, this is basically giving us 100% increased damage multiplier, because we have Petrify and Burn. Now, if we're doing Seasonal, and we have Bronte running a Poison Reactor, and we have Sandman, and we have a Jungler, we now have Petrify, Poison, Shock, and Burn. That's a 200% damage multiplier from one relic that we have picked up in our run, which is then going to get further buffed by each of these additional relics that we can pick up when we find reactors for our Bronte. So, the way you determine if you want to pick up a reactor or not is 1. Does your breaker already have that status tied to any of its abilities? And 2, does a weapon have this status tied to any of its like mechanics? So like the venom rifle already poisons, so the poison reactor will become redundant. And 3, do you fire fast enough to be able to proc the 10 hits consistently? If you can't trigger the 10 hit consistently, so this would be on someone like Liner, who can attack really fast, these reactors will be a good pickup for you. But if you're playing someone like Jungler, where all you're doing is firing one Crasher and then dropping down your mines, these reactors become far less valuable for you because you're not going to be able to proc them as often. I hope this video has been helpful. If it has, please like, comment, subscribe, all the usual YouTube jazz that people say these days. As well as just let me know what other systems you would like explained in your boring video, or just general things you would like to see, and I'll try to get on it and make them as quick as I can. Thank you very much for watching.